You or your parents may be just about to make one of the biggest irrevocable financial decisions of your entire lives. And if you make it wrong, which, by the way, many people do, it could cost your family tens of thousands of dollars over the next 30 years. Welcome back to the Executive Financial Planning Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Doherty, and today we are talking Social Security with expert Daniel Hurley. I almost messed up there, Daniel. I almost called you Dan. He prefers Daniel. Daniel is a partner at Social Security Informed. He and his firm are on a mission to help individuals like you and your parents make truly informed decisions about one of the most significant and most misunderstood assets in your retirement toolkit. I love it that you guys call it an asset and not an income, because it truly is an asset for retirement. And I've asked him to be here today because years ago, I heard Daniel's partner, Elaine Simmons, speak to a crowd of financial advisors. And let me tell you that this woman is the go-to person for making sure that you are getting everything you can out of the Social Security program. And that is because she spent, and Daniel, you can correct me on this if I'm wrong, 34 years working at the Social Security Administration and essentially watching people and paying attention to some of the mistakes that they would make and the issues that they faced. And now she's out sharing that along with Daniel to help people like you make better decisions. So today we're going to talk about some of the common questions that you have about the future of the program. We're going to talk a little bit about the claiming mistakes that people make and why people claim at different ages. But ultimately, I would say why you need to create your own plan and not listen to your friends or even sometimes to software programs. So Daniel, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Matt. And I love the dramatic entry there around Social Security and the pitfalls. You know, you started by calling me an expert. Even my dear friend and partner, Elaine, who spent 35 years almost at Social Security and has been doing it as a private consultant for now over 50, if you combine our work record there. We both do not call ourselves experts because we know enough to know what we don't know. There is a program operation manual system. This is like a couple of encyclopedias of rules and regulations. There are nuances every step of the way. And as Matt said, talking to a friend or relative or family member is dangerous because everybody's situation is a little bit different. Our ages, our health, our life events. And so, you know, there's nothing cookie cutter about Social Security, which of course gives us job security at Social Security Informed. But he also mentioned that I reference Social Security as an asset, an investment. And if I'm giving a live presentation, I almost always pause after I use Social Security and asset or investment in the same sentence, because without fail, someone in the audience starts laughing or cackling. What are you talking about, Daniel? This isn't real money. It was a darn tax I was forced to pay. It's an emotional decision. This isn't real. I got to run and get it before the government goes broke or I die. These are the things we hear all the time. And we're asking each and every one of you to step back and take a more thoughtful approach, understanding the pros and cons every step of the way. One thing we adamantly do not do is tell you what to do. We don't give recommendations, but we do tell you key considerations we think are critical. By the end of a call with us, if you do a personal consultation, you understand the things that we think are important, but it's ultimately about you in concert with your advisor and the rest of that financial assets going into retirement to make a good, informed decision. Hence our firm's name, Social Security Informed. As long as you make a good, informed decision, there is not a right or wrong answer, Matt.
So you made me think of this as you're talking. Like when people, what do most people do when they're claiming? They go and they talk to somebody at the Social Security Administration and basically say, these are the things that I should do, right? And that actually becomes a mistake, correct?
Absolutely. Elaine, in her 34 plus years, as you correctly stated, She was a supervisor in multiple offices, a technical expert. They're the ones in the office that's supposed to know the most. But as a supervisor, she would walk behind people and just cringe her employees as they're giving financial advice, their opinion and financial advice across the desk to beneficiaries. And she knew full well that that person claimed bankruptcy the couple months earlier or the year before. These people are not your financial advisor, and unfortunately, they have a training issue at Social Security. There are great people that work there, but there's a lot of people that just don't know what they don't know. That's a phrase we use at our firm all the time because of the nuances, and they share their opinion as if it's gospel, and it is not. And this is a huge area where things go wrong straight out of the way, and people are financially harmed. This is what gets Elaine and I. We have Irish running through our blood. I'm a Hurley, so my wife, her maiden name's a Clark. We're screaming Irish, but if you go back to that stereotypical Irish person, Elaine and I are both penny pinchers. We think of Social Security when we're talking with individuals like it's our money, and we nickel and dime every decision so that you fully understand it. But in the end, it's your decision, not ours, based on the objectives in concert with your advisor on what's best for you in your situation.
Can you share some of the most common mistakes that you see people make based on the advice they get from people at the Social Security Administration?
Well, I'll share a story. And when we give presentations, Matt, as you've heard Elaine speak, we story tell individuals that we help throughout the years, connecting nuances. One of my favorite stories I share in presentations is a woman I helped in the Woodlands, Texas, where I live. She just got let go from the oil and gas industry, and she was successful. She was 65 years old, but out of a job. She was married to a man for 25 years, but the marriage ended in divorce. She had her children with this man, but on her own record, there's no divorce spousal benefits because she was not financially dependent on him. It was about her earnings. And she went to her advisor, who talked to me and said, let's have a chat with her, because she was thinking about taking her benefits at 65. Well, the benefit amount was $2,700 a month on her own record. But when we got on the call, and we have people fill out an entitlement worksheet that asks specific questions, we always laugh and make a joke around the marriage history because people do not like to share those skeletons in their closet. But I'm telling you, marriage history is one of the major ways you can lose money. By being a little bit embarrassed about something that didn't end exactly the way you thought. There might be real money out there, and there's no statute of limitations. It's all about in the moment, do you meet the criteria? So I asked her, is this the only marriage in your life? And she started to hem and haw. And I knew something was there, and she goes, well, after a little bit of prying, I find out she was married to someone. She got married at 20 to a man that was 18 years older than her. This man was successful and making very good money. And after 2 years of marriage, he died tragically in a car accident. A lot of people think with marriage, you need 10 years in order to be qualified for benefits on their record. That is only in a divorce situation. In this person's situation, with a widower benefit, a current marriage requirement is 9 months and married to at the time of death. This woman was married to this man for 2 years. She met the criteria. It also says you cannot be married, or your remarriage has to come after age 60. That remarriage after age 60, ladies and gentlemen, only in a death benefit. Remarriage and living spousal, divorce spousal benefits cancels entitlement. You close the door on the ex, you're opening the door on your new spouse. But with death benefits, remarriage after age 60 leaves the door open. This man was also making maximum wages the 10 years leading up to his death. A lot of people are not aware that the calculation on a widow's benefit, someone who dies young like that at 40, he is deemed to be full retirement age at the time of death. So the benefit to her all these years later, 45 years later, was as if this man kept working up to 67, his full retirement age. So she went down to Social Security and she asked, I was married to this man. Am I due any benefits? And the employee says, you know what, honey? Yes, you are. The reduced widow's benefit is $2,500 on his record. But you're due 27 on your own record. Getting back to my point, Matt, about how they share their advice as if it's gospel. And she goes to this woman, why in the world would you take 2,500 on this deceased husband of yours when you could get $200 more on your own record? Leaves it at that. Doesn't give any more information. Anyone who listens to that would be like, of course I want $200 more a month. But what she didn't share with my client was that if she takes the 2,500, her own 2,700 is growing to full retirement age, and up to 70 is closer to $4,000 a month at 70. Mm-hmm. If she takes that 2,700, she closes all the benefits on this deceased spouse from 100 years ago, 45 years to be exact, and she never gets a penny, and she's locking in her own 27. If she takes the 2,500 a month, her own benefit is growing off to the side, and she can apply for it on the back end. Our biggest consideration with everyone is do everything possible to protect the higher foundational income on the back end, growing with those inflationary adjustments Social Security offers. So that would be an example where this woman was sharing candid information that sounded transparent, but she missed the boat. The fact that you take that 2,700, it would have been a catastrophic mistake in our personal opinion. This woman wasn't even sure if she was going to retire or look for work. Remember, Social Security has an earnings test. She's 65. Her full retirement age, let's just say for this conversation, is 67. So if she goes back to work, benefits are withheld if she's making too much money. And then at 67, when she turns full retirement age, they'll go back and incrementally increase the benefit for the number of months that benefits were not paid or partially paid. So if she takes the 2,500 and returns to work, the benefits are stopped, but at full retirement age, she gets a little booster in that benefit. She can keep receiving that even if she's still working at full retirement age up to 70, and then apply for that higher benefit on the back end. This would be a very small example of where sometimes their intentions aren't to give bad information, but they can't help themselves. They just share off the cuff, and they don't understand all the nuances of Social Security. They're very poorly trained on the whole. So it's not that they're doing it intentionally, but they could be financially harming you if you're not looking into this and talking to someone who really understands the moving parts.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm a financial advisor who's been helping people with this kind of stuff my entire career. And listening to you, my head starts to spin, right? Yeah. Like everything you're saying, you're so good and you know all the nuances of it, but my head starts to spin thinking, wait a minute, what are all the different things I need to think about? So what I'm really hearing, right, is what people need to hear is make sure that when you are going to make your claiming decisions, that one, you share everything about your history, your marriage history, your divorce history, all those things with whoever you're talking to, and ask as many questions as you possibly can. I get not everybody can work with Social Security Informed, right? You guys cannot help the entire nation.
Well, we can't, but we can help a lot of people, and we'd welcome the business. But, don't rely on Social Security to give you all the information. We've actually tested with a client of mine. I had a verbatim question that I had that person ask Social Security. They called the 800 number. They asked the same exact question to 10 different Social Security employees, and they got 5 different answers to the same verbatim question. What I can't emphasize enough is, although not everyone can speak with Social Security Informed, talk with someone who can go through the nuances of Social Security. So many people, it's an emotional decision. I've retired, and it's my job and duty to march down to Social Security and get paid. They don't think about the moving parts. Just like with any other major financial decision moving into retirement, there is a give and a take, a pro and a con. What I can't encourage all of you listening to enough to do is to get informed about the moving parts of your situation. We always start when we do personalized consultations. Our option 1 is always what we call the take the money and run option. Based on your age, your eligibility, and your work status, what's the earliest you, and if a spouse is involved, can run down and take your benefits and go off into retirement and have a ball. Then we build out from there. At the end of the call, even though we're highlighting the considerations we think are critical for that couple or individual to consider. In the end, we say talk with your advisor. Talk as a couple about your objectives. And if you take the money and run in option one, good on you. Again, there's not a right or wrong decision. What we find, though, is people talk to their friends, their family, and after we do a consultation with someone calls us up and says, Daniel, you talked to John and Samantha the other week. I'm her brother or whatever. And they say, did you say this? Is this true about Social Security? And I say, yes. And they say, well, darn it, I took my benefits 3 years ago. Had I known that, I would have done it differently. This always breaks our heart. What we always encourage people to look in is not ask, what if I die? Or what if the government goes broke? But what if one of us lives? And if we want to address the government solvency issue, I think it's important to address. But the more important question is, what if one of us lives, not if we die? We jokingly say, if you die, and I don't mean to be crass, you're dead. It doesn't matter anymore. No one's popped out of their grave and said, darn, I didn't get back what I paid into the system. But I have talked to the elderly women, and I hate to break it to you men listening. Women tend to outlive us men statistically, and they tend to do it by a wide margin. So it's usually women late in life on the back end, where when maybe the other assets have been drawn down, increasing that foundational income, growing with inflationary adjustments is huge. What if one of us lives instead of what if I die? We think the more critical question falls with what if one of us lives?
This is excellent because this kind of tees up something that I talk about a lot of the times, which is the fact that most financial advisors are actually just investment managers. They're not actually doing comprehensive financial planning, and they don't really know the ins and the outs of Social Security and what claiming strategies people should take. And so people are going to rely on them to give them advice. And I shared with Daniel at the beginning of the call that my father, who was a financial advisor for I don't know how many years at the time he reached 65, and Dad, I'm sorry if you're listening that I'm throwing you under the bus here, but he claimed his Social Security at 65 based on his strategy was a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. It was completely an emotional decision. It was not based on what was the absolute best financial decision for him and my stepmom. It was literally just based on that emotional strategy. It's not that he didn't really know the differences. He did, but he just made that emotional decision. So that in turn caused some of the people that he worked with to start taking their Social Security early instead of just actually asking questions, figuring out what made most sense for them, and doing all the things that Daniel is talking about right here.
And in my prior life, I was telling Matt that I used to sell investments to financial advisors, and I would run into this all the time, where the financial advisor that's very successful, making a very good living at full retirement age, when that earnings test goes away, a lot of people think the earnings test is a penalty and unfair thing. If you go back to the founders of Social Security was meant to be there for us in retirement, not while we're working full time, making a good living. In fact, the earnings test used to go all the way up to age 70, but in the tech bubble crisis, when the tech bubble crashed, all these retirees that retired at 62, 64, 65, their 401ks were cut in half. And when they went back to work because they had to, their benefits were being offset for their earnings over the allowable amount. It was a crisis in our country. So they lowered the earnings test to only apply up to full retirement age. If you were full retirement age or older, you could work and earn as much as you please. But the thing I ran into all the time, and I hate to break it to everyone, even with that one big, beautiful bill that was signed into law last year by the current administration, Social Security benefits are still potentially taxable for the rest of our lives at our current tax bracket each and every year. We jokingly say at Social Security Informed, if you have an estate large enough, you're fortunate enough, they might even tap dance on your grave with estate taxes. But that tax application is critical for a lot of advisors. They didn't understand. From full retirement age up to age 70, your benefits grow 8% tax-deferred growth for every 12 months you delay. We emphasize that growth is incremental by the month, not by the year. So 8% divided by 12 months is 0.666%. It grows every month. But if you're making a good living and potentially in the highest tax bracket, what's the after-tax return? Because up to 85% of our benefits, even today, are still potentially taxable at our current tax bracket each and every year for the rest of our lives. So these advisors making a good living, maybe in the maximum tax bracket, 85% of their benefits are taxed at 35% potentially.
Mm-hmm.
What does that make the after tax return that your dad, and I hate to beat on you too, Matt's dad, but what did you actually have to beat if you're in that highest tax bracket? Probably 12 to 13% annualized returns that you don't only make, but then lock in and annuitize it. And the biggest clincher on all of that always goes back to protecting the surviving spouse. With Matt's stepmom, it wasn't just about Matt's dad that he was locking in that 65, 66 amount. He was locking that in potentially to his wife in that lower amount for the rest of her life. And again, I hate to break it to you, men, we do buck the trend every now and again, but women outlive us significantly, and on average by 10 to 15 years. So as we look at this decision, it's not only about us, it's about that survivor spouse. If you have the higher benefit amount, this is another thing I share with people all the time. When the first spouse passes away, and couples do not hold hands and die together, it happens every once and again, but most of the time the other spouse lives on, and sometimes for a significant period of time. But when there's two benefits going into the death of the first spouse, even if it's a couple bucks difference, the lower benefit is lost. It goes by the wayside. So many people I talk to, couples, think that when the first spouse passes away, we share in a portion of our deceased spouse's benefit. A few couples have told me they thought they got both. The answer is only the higher benefit lives on. So whoever that higher earner is in a couple, in a relationship, their decision is more valuable. The risk return profile is dramatically different because theirs lives on, growing with inflationary adjustments for the rest of the life, whoever's left standing. That second benefit, a lot of people hear Elaine and I speak and they say, oh, Daniel and Elaine, they just tell everyone to delay their benefits, maximize the pile at the end. No, we don't. We do encourage that higher earner to try to work their way out in concert with their advisor every step of the way. But the lower benefit, the risk return profile is dramatically different. It's on the first to fall. Down here in the Houston area, if anyone's familiar with it, we have these loops that go around Houston, the 610 loop, the Beltway 8, and now they're even building out a third loop called the 99. Every time I get on those highways, I'm putting my life at risk. Life does and can happen to each and every one of us. If one of us, of the spouses, pass away, it could hit us at any moment. It's the higher benefit that lives on. So for all of you, that maximizing and protecting that higher benefit, we always like it when the higher earner is the older spouse too. If they are the younger spouse, it is emotionally painful for that younger spouse to wait up to 67 or potentially, yes, I said it, 70, if their spouse is 5 years older, that spouse. So there's an emotional element too. That's why we walk you through this step by step, so that hopefully by the end of the call, you have an analysis, but you also have an understanding we've talked through on the moving parts. What if there is an unexpected death? We address that because it's important, because of the assumptions people make that are flat out wrong about how the money is paid or not paid. Matt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a great stuff, right? I mean, ultimately, all this comes down to what I said earlier. It's just people need to make sure that they're asking the right questions and sharing all their information, and not just assuming that things are right and not listening to their friends that are telling them what they should do. Right?
We jokingly say, Matt, your friends, your family, even the strangers at the cocktail parties, or as I was joking with Matt before we went live, strangers in a Starbucks line, they're often wrong, but never in doubt, is a saying we have, a Southern phrase at Social Security. When it comes to Social Security, put the earmuffs on and walk away. At a cocktail party or family event, we'll even joke, talk politics, get the blood stirring, have a fight about that, but leave Social Security off to the side. Your friends, your family, they're often wrong, but never in doubt. And I would say that's true about the Social Security employees themselves. They will tell you with conviction what they think instead of what you can and cannot do. And this is dangerous, even especially coming from a Social Security employee who you give certain authority to because they are an employee of the government agency. But they are always, I changed that word, they are often wrong in sharing their opinion that can get you financially harmed. So this is why we always want to look at it on the front end before you go visit Social Security, so you fully understand every moving part. Matt, Social Security, when we talk about it as an asset or an investment, financial advisors, they will generally come up as you move into retirement. You move from the accumulation stage to the withdrawal stage. And Matt and his team probably develop a personalized withdrawal rate on your assets that could be moving year to year and fluent. But the consensus in the financial advisory world is around a 4% rate of withdrawal. The whole idea on a withdrawal rate is we don't outlive our money in retirement. Well, we are regularly coming up with options that represent as if you had saved $1 to $2 million in assets. That's what Social Security represents at a 4% rate of withdrawal. $1 million at a 4% rate of withdrawal is $40,000 a year. 2,080,000. We are regularly coming up with options for couples that represent or will have an income stream of 40 to 80,000. Just the other week, I came up with one for a couple. It was over 9,500 a month. It was close to 118,000, a little over 118,000 in foundational income from Social Security. And I haven't even mentioned the most underappreciated part, the inflationary adjustments that will double that amount in retirement. On average, Social Security benefits will double every 20 years on just the cost of living adjustments alone. But because of the inflation we've been experiencing, we're actually on track to doubling in less than 20 years because of these high inflationary years where the cost of living adjustments have been 8.7 a few years ago, a highest in over 40 years. A year before that, it was 5.9, the highest in over 35 years. Those inflationary adjustments are huge. So every step of the way, yes, this is a significant asset. We jokingly tell people, unlike with Matt and your IRA or your rollover 401ks that you have, you can't call up Matt and redeem the assets in your account when we're talking about Social Security. It doesn't work like that, like you can with a 401k or IRA. But the income stream, what would you need in assets? For the majority of people, Social Security, even people with extreme wealth, Social Security is still a significant asset. We strongly encourage everybody to make an informed decision. Do not be mindless about something that represents $1 to over $2 million in assets to generate this income. If you want to be mindless and wild and woolly about your Social Security, I'll send you my email address and I'm happy to go meet you at a car dealership. I'm happy to spend that kind of money if you want to be mindless about it, but we can't be. We can't afford to be. This is too big. It's too significant. And what we ask each and every person to do is not to do this decision or that decision, but make an informed decision. Understand the moving parts in concert with your financial advisor and make a good informed decision.
Absolutely. Excellent. Can you talk a little bit right now about how you guys view the future? I mean, everybody's always very concerned about the fact that Social Security statements say that basically after 2030, that they're only going to be able to pay out about 75% of the benefits that they're showing you. Can you talk a little bit about that and where you guys feel the program is going and how it's going to affect people?
I think that is a valuable question because without fail, this is usually one of the first questions once our presentation's over. Individuals will say, that all sounds great, Daniel or Elaine, but what about the solvency issue? What about the program going broke? Well, what we find frustrating is that people don't ask the then what question. Going back to my partner, Elaine, she started working at Social Security in her early 20s. She is actually 72 years old as of February of this year. During that time, starting in early 20s, she says every generation that walked through the door said Social Security would not be there for them, just like probably all the generations that are leading up to retirement are thinking the same exact thing. They have never missed a check or a payment. The statistic that I share is Matt is correct. The Board of Trustees and the dollar amount varies, but they say that by sometime in the early 2030s, if we don't address the solvency issue, then the trust funds are going to be emptied out and we're going to have to pay based just on taxes in. And it could come to about anywhere from a 15 to a 25% cut in everybody's benefits across the board. That sounds scary. It creates an emotional knee jerk. I got to run and get this money before the program goes broke. But no one asks the then what question. What I'm about to explain isn't to get you scared or terrified or even more emotional, but to start thinking thoughtfully through that process. I just went on Copilot, Microsoft's AI tool, the other week, and I asked how many people in this country are taking benefits from Social Security. The answer, it shot back, and again, they're not always 100% accurate. That AI, you do got to kind of work with. But it said 1 in 5 people in this country are getting a check from Social Security. I find this to be a grotesque statistic, but 1 in 5 people. You might be thinking to me, yourself, Daniel, there's no way 1 in 5 people are retired in this country. And you would be correct. But Social Security doesn't just pay retirement benefits. We talked about spousal benefits, divorce spousal benefits. We've talked a little bit about widows benefits, divorce widow benefits. There's children's benefits to people that die young that have children under the age of 18 or still in high school up past age 18. What about disabled adult children? With autism at birth or Down syndrome or some traumatic event before age 22, there's benefits to disabled adult children. I haven't even talked about Social Security disability. Statistically, a third of this country will become disabled before age 62, and the disability benefit is within a few dollars of your full retirement money amount early. What we always say at Social Security Informed, 1 in 5 people dependent on these benefits. If benefits are cut by 25%, states like Florida and Arizona would flatline in a day. This money stimulates the economy. It goes to the grocery store. It pays rent. It does all these things. The then what question that I think a lot of people don't ask is what would happen then to the economy? What would happen to the stock and bond market? In my personal opinion, your Social Security benefit reduced 25% is going to beat that private pension, is going to beat the returns in the stock market and bond market, because it is going to be catastrophic should that happen without our politicians coming in and addressing this solvency issue. This isn't to scare you, but we even say Venezuela might start looking like an attractive place to go live if benefits are cut by 25%. This is to say that we can't allow this to happen. Our Congress is very good at waiting till the very last minute to make changes and adjust. The last time we addressed the solvency issue was in the 1983 amendments, which is, my math, about almost 24 years ago, 43 years ago. Mm-hmm. The last time we addressed the solvency issue. It can be small fixes, small things that fix this solvency issue for generations ahead. But if benefits are cut, like everyone fears about, ask the then what question. What would happen to the rest of the assets? What would happen to this country? Because it would be catastrophic, and that's not to scare you, but to make you think about it. It's still, in my personal opinion, and Elaine's, your Social Security might be the best thing you have going for you in that world because of the devastation everywhere else. Ask those then what questions. Get informed about the moving parts. And as long as you make a good informed decision, like I've already reiterated today, you're going to be good to go, because there's not a right or wrong answer. When people get on the phone with me and we do a personal consultation, they say, Daniel, you're the specialist. Just tell us what to do. Again, not to be crass, but I'll tell Mr. and Mrs. Smith, just tell me when the two of you are going to drop dead and call to life, and I'll tell you exactly what to do. But the reality is, it doesn't work that way. This is an income for life. So we got to have a conversation as a couple and in concert with our advisor, moving through the moving parts, the things that are important to us, and ultimately go make a good decision that you don't regret down the line, that you knew all the moving parts going into, and you are going to be good to go.
Daniel, this has been amazing. This is just one more great example of why it is so important to be working with the right people who ask the right questions and who are willing to take the time to make sure they understand every facet of your financial life. Because if you don't, it could literally be costing you thousands of dollars. So thank you for coming on and sharing all this information. Is there anything else you want to share before we close out?
Well, there is so much to share. But what I would say, and we could literally be on this podcast for hours. There's so many things we didn't we didn't discuss. But what I encourage people to do, and Matt, I will send you an entitlement worksheet that we have that you can actually go onto our website at ssinformed.com. Right below Elaine and my picture, there's a key considerations box that you can click on and download this entitlement worksheet for free. But it asks the key questions. It's the one that has that marriage history. We're not trying to pry into the skeletons in your closet. What we're asking is for you to put down these key things about marriage history. And then there's a lot of yes, no questions. If you're answering no to those questions, cross that off. That's an entitlement that doesn't apply to you. If you answer yes, it means the door's open to something. It doesn't mean you're necessarily do something, but it needs to be further examined. And then have that conversation with your advisor or with someone who knows about the program to walk you through your moving parts so that you can make that good informed decision in the end. So I would encourage people to start that process. That entitlement worksheet, for a lot of people, it sounds like this robust document. It's big font, mostly yes, no questions. It's pretty simple to fill out. It's not a homework assignment, but it's a way for you to kind of look at your life and the life events in your life and see how many yeses and different things you put there. That's opening the door to a more complex situation. The more yeses, the marriage history, the more life happens to each and every one of you, the more complex and nuanced Social Security becomes.
Perfect. And say it again. Was it SS Informed or SocialSecurityInformed.com?
We have both. So Social Security Informed or SS for Social Security Informed, INFORMED.com. And you can download that worksheet, which I'd encourage each of us to do. If we're not asking the right questions, we're already behind the 8 ball.
Yep. Well, again, this has been amazing. Thank you for that. Go to their website. If you have questions, reach out to us if you want to talk to a financial advisor who's willing to take the time to walk you through some of these steps as well. And Daniel, maybe we'll have you back. As you said, there's hours more of content we could go through. Maybe we'll have you back for another episode one day in the future to talk about some of those things.
Well, I'd love the opportunity. And Matt, thank you for having me on. It's an honor to be here.
You got it. Thank you, Daniel. Wait, stop. It's your favorite part of any podcast, the disclosures. Folks, everything that I just talked about is for informational and educational purposes only because I don't know you. You cannot rely on the information I just gave you to take action on anything specific, especially with your investments. While my firm, Balanced Wealth Group, LLC, is in fact a registered investment advisor, what I said does not take into account your specific goals, your investment objectives or time horizons, your tax status, or your estate plans. You need to consult your own financial advisor, accountant, or attorney to determine if the strategies I shared might be right for you. And keep in mind that I essentially record these things live. So most of the things I say should be accurate, but they might not be. So make sure you check everything that I've discussed. Our advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Balanced Wealth Group and those that represent us are properly licensed or happen to be exempt from licensure.